about like, what do I do? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? Like, what's going on? Like, people are dying. This, I mean, it's like, and it's like so much collateral damage too after the war with like people with mental health issues and all the things that come around that. So you just like, how do we make sense of it? And so the idea was to be able to say like, we have like everything we're learning. I mean, we have to be able to see the issues in the world and fixing the issues of the world through the lenses of the Torah, right? And I mean, historically, you've had people that may like quote a Bible verse or something like that, but really bringing in, and so the idea, the concept, the movement that I'm really pushing is this idea of soul to soul diplomacy, right? Which is like everything we've been talking about, like really just like reevaluating the human being and seeing the human being from the soul level, a neshama level, and then being able to engage in that way. What is the world? What is like say foreign? What does diplomacy look like when two people acknowledge that they both have souls, right? Or laws, or even military intervention, right? Every like that, not like a concept like we all have souls, right? That's a concept, right? What we're talking about is like actually like looking across the table and seeing another soul and acknowledging you have a soul and acknowledging that those souls are connected. Or when you look at a group of people, right? Acknowledging that these group of people have souls and I have a soul, right? And that being the basis of coming in to a conversation to resolve conflicts or even expand opportunities is to understand the context of soul and that type of thing. So that's is something I'm really passionate about. And so I think that, a couple of those publications that a couple of the articles that recently came out the last couple of weeks were with JNS, which is an extremely respected political publication here in the Middle East, in general around the world, but a lot of the policies and ideas that come out from Israel and other places in this region are discussed and written about there first, as where other publications like the Jerusalem Post and Israeli Times are kind of like dealing with multiple issues, lifestyle issues, also a lot of geopolitical stuff. So it's a very big honor to be published in that. And the thing is, the truth is, and I've been saying this, for a long time, it's like the perspective of the African American internationally is just, it's the most interesting thing. Everyone's been watching the story of, my ancestors, right? Whether they know about the whole story of the transatlantic slave trade or, the us in the Jim Crow civil rights movement, the fight for equality, all these different things. And so to have a descendant of that purity, discussing these points, is a very big pleasure for everybody. And so I'm going to expand. I'm going to start writing for many different publications, outside of Israel, and bringing, so, and just to really push this idea of solo diplomacy. But that being said, we're in the Ramchal, and I guess from chapter 31 to 35, he's in this whole world of Adam Kadmon, right? And so, as we know that there's four worlds, you have the world of Absolute, the world of Bria, the world of Yitzira, the world of Asiya, and the light force of the Creator. Goes through these kind of like generations of expression, all the way down to the physical world, the world of Asiya, where we live at. But the world above that is the world of Adam Kadmon, right? And we learned about it earlier, and we were able to see like the design of the man, right? The human being, meaning a human being is made up of these 10 dimensions, and they're expressed in the circle, the igul, and the yashar, right? The straight line. And so we had a framework on why God designed us this way. I mean, we could have easily been designed a lot of other ways, right? But we're designed in this physical way because it's expression of a level a level of receiving of God's light, which is the highest level of receiving of God's light. And we also know, and I'm sure he's going to go into this a lot, is that everything that exists goes through this channel, right? And so the highest expression of this channel of Adam Kadmon that makes itself make manifest in the world of Asiya, where we're at now, is mankind, right? And so we're the rock kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom are subservient to that. And in the frame of man, the man who uses his free will to serve God is at the highest level of the kingdom of man, right? So he's going to go into that, and I'm excited. I purposely try not to go ahead of this year because I want to be on the adventure. You know what I mean? I don't. It's not just about teaching; it's about learning, and just kind of like being kind of like the navigator, right? To get through this new world of reality. So I think we all had a little bit of a break to start a new era of learning, and this for sure is going to change our lives. So let's continue on. Any ideas before we go further? While I bring it up?
No, no, I'm ready to roll.
Yep. All right. Specifically, okay. That rocky music on in the background. Okay. So we're here. Okay. So Adam Kadmon, right? No, sorry. Sehu Sader, Rishon Shel Galili L'Shem Havia. Havi. So he says the entire government of the entire universe is ordered under the four letters of God's name. Havaya. We're going to understand more what that means. It says Ha Seder, like Seder, like this. He said the first order Hashakabel Haor Benitzel Le Amud Be Sedor Ashrei Sfirot Be Bachinat of Sedor. So he says the first order. So as you know, as Ramko teaches, he brings up a idea, and then from there we break down that idea into understanding each part of it. So said the first order is assumed by the emanated light. So the first order of light that emanates into what we call reality is standing in the form of the 10 sphirot, arranged in the likeness of man. Is called Adam Kadmon. This is the order of the name Havaya, blessed be He, forever and ever. This means that all the different orders and laws are drawn after and come under the order of these four letters. Okay? In accordance with this order, the teachings of Kabbalah always trace everything to the underlying foundation of the four letters of the Blessed Be He. So we all know the idea of Yud He Vav He, and we see it a lot. And you see like other people say, "Oh, Yahweh, Yahweh," it's God. Now we're understanding on a deeper level what's going on, right? So it says Ad Ata Deverinu Min Hasferot Harishonim. He says up until now we've discussed the first foundations, the residue, the curve, the straight line, and all that depends on them, right? So he said now we must explain the structures that were built out of them in accordance with what was prepared in them. So we're going to understand what that means. So the structure, so we have the Kav, right, which is the line from the endless world that comes through the Simsun that fuels us. So we're receiving God's light all the time. And then we have the residue, which is the expressions of the lights from the endless world that comes into the Simsun. And we are only connecting to the lowest part of that, which is the residue, right? It's like the dirt on the feet, right? We only see the dirt on the feet, the whole body, right, which is the 10 sphirot, which is in the likeness of man. We don't see that because it's beyond our capabilities. Chalaki ha ma'amar hazeh hem gimel. So he says so the structure is in three parts. This explains the first order, I guess. The first order explains this explains the first order in which is called Adam Kedmon. So we're going to learn that hopefully today. We don't know how long each chapter is. He said this is the order. He says this explains that this order is that of the name of the blessed be he. And then the third part means that this explains the meaning and purpose of this order. Okay, so now we're starting on one. It says Ha Seder Rishonim Shekabel Haora Hanitzel. Okay. It says Vehainu Ki Tichalet Hamatsa Ha Mishu. Whoa. Okay. So he said the first order. So he's going off of we're going off of that sentence, right? The first order assumed by the emanating light. Okay. We have already discussed the residue exists initially only as the first root of all that would be created afterwards, standing as a general whole, waiting to divide into its particulars. Indeed, many powers are found there, and thus the Ari stated that this emanation contains worlds without end. It's like that idea of a seed, right? The seed goes in the ground, and you can say the seed in comparison to the tree that grows, 100 feet in the air, right? It's the you could say it's the lowest part, but also contains all the power. So you're saying that the idea of the residue exists only initially as the first part of root of all that would be created afterwards. So this is like the seed, right? The seed that goes in the ground, oof, everything blossoms out on. Uferose hanain hine beti kunim amru. He says to explain this further. He says in the Tukuni Zohar, he says there is no angel that does not have within it the name of Havaya, blessed be he. And he says, and all the other names are considered attributes of this name. So that name that we see in the Torah, that what we call, I guess, the Tetragrammaton, that name is the basis of everything. That name of God is the foundation for everything that emanates. So he's saying there's not even an angel that doesn't have this name. And the Zohar states that there are men who inherit 310 worlds, but it is impossible to ascribe any number to the worlds of the master of the universe. He says what this means is that although we speak only of the four worlds, the truth is that there are worlds without numbers. Yikes. I just took everything to a new level. This is because every complete governmental order consisting of an active source of influence, mishpah, and receiver, mikabel, is called a world, olam. Okay, wow. Okay, so he's saying there's four worlds that we talk to. Like even when we talk about in the beginning, when he talks about God's raton, God's will, he says like there's the Ein Sof, and we know about the Ein Sof, and Ein Sof is beyond our imagination. But even within that, even within that, there's many other expressions of God's will that are beyond our logic. We don't have comprehension to. So he's saying like over here, there's four worlds, and we know the worlds are kind of like a combination of light and vessel, right? Right. And so he's saying here the mashpia, right? The mashpia is the influence, right? Is the light force. Like the man is the mashpia, and the woman is the mikabel. She's a receiver. So in intimacy, the man is expressing the mashpia, and the woman is representing the mikabel, the receiver. And together they create a world, right? I'm just using that as an analogy. And this is one complete system. He says, and this is complete system or tree of the relevant sources of influence and receivers and all the various orders and interconnections. He says there are very many such trees, specifically specifically, generally, every name is a tree in itself, and all of those levels, influences, and chariots, markavot, the governmental appearances are arranged in order and unique to itself. So he's taking this idea of like light and vessel creating a world, but within that world, we want to understand it in the frame of tree, right? Meaning that there's a seed, and the seed grows roots, it grows trunks, it grows branches, it grows leaves, and so it has all these different departments that are connected to this core influence. And he's saying that these worlds and these things exist as he said this exist as well, even though we don't have names for them. Ve'ela hem ha'olamot shivu shima ha-sadikim derek mashel. So he says, are the worlds which the Sadiqim inherit. For example, with the emanation of Chokhmah from Keter, 310 completed trees came into being. So he's saying, like, within the dynamic of Keter being the light per se, and Chokhmah being the vessel, he says in that context alone, there's all these subcomponents of worlds, which he's explaining how the different worlds have these different levels, and he's referring to them as trees, came into being for Chokmah is Yesh Mayan, the existence out of nothing, and the letter of Yesh has the numerical value of 300. This is the secret of the 310 worlds that the Sadiqim inherit. So allegedly, by being righteous, and I guess he's going to go more into that to explain how this all works, and because these are all like big ideas. He said this is the secret of the 310 worlds of the Sadiqim. In addition, there are the worlds of the souls. For each soul is a major root in the governmental order, and each soul has a tree of its own. This is the meaning of the statement in the Zohar that each tzaddik has a world of his own. Ah, now we get it, huh? So all of us, like as we continue on our righteous journey, all of our actions are creating worlds that we're ultimately living in, right? Because every mitzvah we do fuels the sphirot. Everything around us is like basically a cube of light, right? Every blade of grass, every word that we say, every action, every food we eat, everything is a connection to energy. So as we deal with that energy, with our intentions in the way that God wants, we fuel the goodness out of it, right? And as we do the opposite, we remove the light out of it, and that also becomes our experience. So he says,
Hello.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is so profound because I remember seeing the word yesh in Mishle. I think it's chapter 821. And this is like a perfect, I mean, it's right there. It literally says it. This is amazing.
Man,
Like
Baruch
it's in the
Hashem.
Tanakh openly.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Torah. We know this, right? The whole Torah is closed. It's all there. We're just getting alternative definitions other than the storyline, right? He says, i.e., the Sadiq himself is the world. He said, but one who obtains everything receives the entire emanation of Chokmah, which consists of 310 worlds. He says, Uvechal olam ve'olam yish mini hatihi veshot misavim. So he says, in every word, there are three kinds of clothing. Okay, in every world, sorry. In every world, there's three types of clothing. What does this mean? He says you have heat bashut, mitzviim, and zivugim, and aliyot, and yiriot, yiridot. Sorry. Okay. So there's three kinds of clothing, like levushim, that are that are basically the clothing of each of these worlds, right? And the worlds are what? Light and vessel, making unifications, right? When we have like when you have we have an apple in your hand and you make the bracha, bore pri ha'etz, right? You now brought the light force of the creator into this kli, which is the apple, right? When you use your mind, right? When you decide in your mind that I'm going to say a bracha, you're creating an energy, and the bracha itself, the words that you say out of your mouth, becomes a kli for the light force of the creator. So we're constantly creating worlds. So he's saying in each of the worlds, there's different kinds of garments, meaning there's different expressions of these worlds that we're creating. And he brought it into um, um, kinds of clothing, states, coupling, ascent, and descent. He says, depending on the nature and the purpose of the world in question, the number of lights in the different worlds do not correspond directly to the number of the 10 sferot. Rather, each has its own particular number of lights, the sum being bound up with the nature of the tree given. Right. So each, as we know, like again, the tree is based off of the seed, and the seed is the lowest, but seemingly also the highest part of the world, and a lot of that comes with our intentions. He says the number of lights in different worlds does not correspond directly with the number of the 10. Okay, so the number of lights in the different worlds does not correspond directly to the number of the 10 sferot. Rather, each has its own particular number of lights. Each world does. It doesn't have to be in the frame of 10 sferot. And the sum of beings bound up with the nature of the tree given. Each of the names of Havaya, blessed be he, gives rise to 70 trees. So even the names Hayah, Baswa rise with 70 trees that are all completely different from each one another. And these are the 70 date palms. Tamar, the date palm, has the conjunction of Truma, signifying each or substitution of the letters or numbers. However, the order of the 10 sferot in the form of the worlds of Asilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asir are called one tree, as we will discuss this further. All right. So again, he's humbling us, and he's saying, okay, you know the four worlds that we're talking about, and we know Asilut, we know Bria, we know Yitzira, we know Asir. Okay, you know that, but there's many worlds that exist. For the Siddiqim, there's another 310. Now we get it, right? And underneath that, and even certain words, even the name of God itself, within that is there's the same word. So it's not just I see I salute and Bria and Yitzira and Asia. Those are just the ones we have names for. But there's infinite worlds around, and for the righteous person, he has over 300 and something worlds. So automatically we're humbled. So we thought we knew something. Now we know. We just know a little bit, right? Okay. Vehine kol haliot ha'eleghem bechokhmavad le ma'at. He says, ach shoresh kol zehu le ma'ala. So he says, in all of these trees are the chariots below. For the roots of all of these lies above. Well, okay, for all of these trees are in the chariot below, but the root of all of this lies above. So again, it's that picture of an upside down tree. No? So he says, for as the line extends itself inside of the residue and forms orders within it, so that the government would unfold properly from the first recipient to the last. For this is called a complete structure. The line produces many different orders, and these are all the attributes forms of these are all the attributes or forms of addresses called kiunim, kinuim, kinuim, kinuim. And he says, and he says that were revealed such as compassionate and graceful, for they were all revealed within the residue. So let's just understand this. So the seed of everything comes from above, right? He's saying this right. He says, now all the trees and the chariots below, but the root is above, right? So everything comes from above and expands, right? We see it upside down, where we see the tree going up in the root being down, right? But it's saying, I mean, it's saying the reality is the opposite, is that really everything is receiving from above and it manifests itself down, even though it looks like everything is from the bottom and it goes up. So I guess that's the point. The world goes upside down, and then he starts to talk about this idea of the line produce many different orders. So the cove itself, right? So there's many different structures from the Ein Sof to the Simsun to my mouth right now that's allowing me to speak, right? So that's a real thing. It's a crazy thing to think about while we're speaking or talking or walking. He says there were all revealed within the residue. He said they all have different functions and are the. You see how the back. First of all, just pause for a second and just look how the Ram called. This is mastery. He's just building the whole scope for us understanding. He's not saying just watch the football game, right? Watch the football game. No, he's explaining to us how the stadium is built, the people that are coming, what their mindset is, the concessions, what is being sold, what the price point is, the parking lot, the different cars, the history, the music they're listening to. He's giving us the whole scope. He's not just saying watch the football game. He said they all have different functions and are the root of different phenomena in this world. Each one is the form of a tree itself, a world, right, with different branches. All the many different great orders that make up the overall order of a government were all rooted there, as we have said, each in the form of a tree itself. Be'azeh Hosea Ha'ein Sof Besador Achad Shenatan Lo Shelit Ala Kulam. He says, and when the Ein Sof, blessed be he, brought forth one order which he put in the control of all of them, now we're getting it, making all the trees nothing but attributes formed of address and garments from which to clothe this order. So he's saying that all these trees, all these orders, all this system, you see how God uses, or the sages or the prophets use different things to express things that are not physical, right? Other people in other faith systems, like the Christians specifically, right? They're hearing about the divinity of these things and they're assuming that it's something to do with God. And God has different parts and these different things. That's why, that's how they went into error, right? They started to take a Jewish guy who followed the Torah mitzvahs like me and you did, who rebelled against the Romans, right? And these things and the ideas in the Torah that could be seemingly look like giving divinity to physicality, saying God has an arm, God has outstretched hands, God different emotions, these different things, or different scenarios, and saying, see, that's our God. And they want to take that idea and they want to place it and put it on man, right? Because they can control it that way, right? They can put images and tell you what it is. Because no one could tell us this, right? We're learning it on our own. All right. So he says according to the way in which the different levels of this order are aroused. Let's go back a little bit. Okay, so the Ein Sof, blessed be he, brought forth one order which he put in control of all of them, right? The head boss of the orders, right? God places them there, so you're in charge of the orders, making making the other trees nothing more but attributes, right? Because there's a central control force. It's not an autonomous entity, these worlds, right? They're under the governance of ourselves, and then we're under governance of something greater. created by God. Forms of address and garments the which to clothe its order. So the orders is where that statement earlier was saying every world has garments. He's saying that the different garments allow us to understand the uniqueness of these different orders. According to the way in which the different levels of this order are aroused, all the other trees carry out their particular function through this central tree. It's interesting when we think about the tree of life, right? He says this only is what he says this alone is what really acts, and is only from here that the lowest realms and creatures emerge and are governed. And their entire service is bound up with this alone. Note the phrasing of the phrase of the Tikkun Zohar quoted earlier. All the names are considered attributes of this name. This is not this does not say that they are attributes, but rather that they are considered as such, as they are equivalent of as they are equivalent to as they are equivalent of the attributes for each one of the trees itself. But the Ein Sof took them and made them a garment around this tree. It's interesting when you think about the pagan stuff with the Christmas tree and stuff, like actually what could be understood as. והאילין hade she'enu מדברים בו, הוא אילן של ד'. So he says, this tree of which we're speaking of is the tree of the four-letter name, Haviyah. Blessed be he, which includes everything from the beginning of Adam Ketman to the end of Asya, and all the different aspects discussed in Kabbalistic literature. Standing around it like a garment are those are the various worlds we have mentioned. Okay, so the supernatural name that connects us to God, you see it in the Torah all the time. We say, we don't say this name, this type of thing, unless we're praying. Now we're getting an idea how big it is. Because some people, they should be like, Yahweh, that name's so holy. How do you just say it out loud? How do you not make sure you're not saying God's name in vain? Right? Standing around it like garments in various worlds. So you have the super name, and then you have all these, like, imagine you have like the master tree, right? The master tree, it's like, you know, a trillion feet out of, into the sky. And then around that tree at its various different levels are other subtrees, right? You could call them branches, you could call them trees, you could call them, twigs or whatever. But those are all roads in themselves. So now when we look at a tree, when we go outside, we could actually use our knowledge and imaginations like, oh, wait, this is tree in all these different levels, and the fact that it was a seed and the seed had roots, and that roots broke through the soil, and from there came a basis, which we call a trunk, and from the trunk, as it expands, there's the idea of leaves, there's the idea of tree, and idea of branches, and so from there, this is why we're looking at the tree outside. It should remind us of the spiritual worlds that we create through our actions, right? Okay. So standing around like a garment are the various worlds that we have mentioned. In themselves, they do not act at all. Rather, they act like garments in which the body is clothed. He said, it is not the garments that act, but rather the body's clothed in the garment. Similarly, this tree acts, this is the supernatural tree, this tree acts though these garments around it, just as the garments that clothes the active body part is included in the action. Similarly, the worlds surrounding whatever part of this, the tree acts, the tree's acts are also included into it, but they are not without purpose. For it is those in which the actor is clothed that hold sway, while the actor himself acts in accordance with their power in executing their controlling functions, yet it is only the wearer of the garment who acts and not the garment itself. So he's saying like all these different levels, all these different worlds, whatever come from a central source. The central source and ultimately is fueling everything, and this is part of the process. And so all the other trees around it are just merely acting as like association, you know, and obviously I know it's a pagan thing, but it really just brings the idea of the decorations on a Christmas tree. And I mean, obviously this is dark stuff, but I'm just taking the tree itself that's been utilized and decorated and beautified and it representing having many different branches and many different, you know, blades of whatever it is. So it says, so let's keep going. Says Uveni Adam. He says, man's service and all that they receive are bound up in this central tree, the name of Havaya, which is the garb in the Parsufim. Afterwards, they all obtain the world in which his name is clothed. For they intent them as a master of the course when they inherit the one that who clothed them. All right, so this comes getting a little choppy. Okay, the service of man and all they receive are bound up in this central tree. What is the central? What's the root of this central tree? The name of God. So everything we receive is from this central tree, the name of Havaya, which is the garb in the parsufim, right? As we learned, we have the neshama, we have the parsufim, right? So the parsufim are inside of the neshama, and these are these unique lights. But those unique lights, within those unique lights is God's name. And afterwards, they all obtain the world in which this name is clothed, and for they inherit them as a matter of course when they inherit the one the one clothed in them. So that's a big statement. When they say God is within us, God is really within us. The basis of the Parsufim, like all forms of light, even the angels, is the name of God. So he says, ve amna sedur haliin hazeh. He says, for we have already said this. And he says the tree extends from the head of Adam Kadmon all the way to the end of Asya. So the whole matrix of Adam Kadmon, which is the first emanation of God in essence, his light, in this reality of the Simsun, and all the way to the bottom level, which is Asya. He's saying, he says, as we have already said, he says these are he says the tree extends. So the tree being the expression of God's name extends all the way from that. So everything encompasses God's name. He says, in essence, this tree is Adam Kadmon and the radiance that emanates from him. For the glorious radiance comes forth from him, and the different parts of the radiance constitute the worlds of Absolute, Bria, Yitzira, and Asya. This is big stuff. Like this is like PhD level stuff. So anyway, so this name of God, which we're expressing it as a tree, because a tree is a way that we understand worlds, because you have a seed element and you have a whole set of creations, and within those worlds, there's the I guess variant worlds or smaller worlds, and they also are made up of the same system. So he's bringing the point of saying that the in essence the tree is Adam Kadmon and the radiance that emanates from him. Okay, so that's the light in the vessel. That's what makes it a world, right? Because it's light and there's also a vessel to receive it. And so he says, for a glorious radiance came forth from him, and And a glorious radiance came forth from him, and the different parts of this radiance constitutes the worlds of. So this great light that we understand that the Adam Kadmon, whatever, within Adam Kadmon, there was these different radiance of lights, like a kaleidoscope, right? One light created all these other subdivisions of light, and these subdivisions of light is what we understand of Aslu, Bria, Yetzira, and Asya, right? He says it is through these very worlds that he can show his existence above. Just as there are many kinds of worlds above with one central world, inside of them, similarly, a single order is visible within the world of Asalubria and Yetzira, in this order of the name of Havaya. Havaya, it's like you know what I mean? It's a real thing. So, okay, so he says, this is the order named Havaya, and he says, standing in the form of the 10 Sphirot, right? So that original emanation of light is in a place of standing, in a place of 10 Sphirot, right? It should, when we say the Amida, it should strengthen that experience. He says, while many others orders in the form of the chariot, others these other orders are included in the fourth. He says Chayot is the fourth. Okay, it says these orders are included in the fourth chariot and their four faces in all the aspects of the chariot. Posador, he says each of these subsidiary orders is a world in itself, right? We're back to that point. He said, but the overall division follows the order of the name of Abiyah, right? So the name of God is in control of everything. Everything is under this dominion. In other words, these worlds that I have mentioned constitute the chariot in all of its turns and pathways, while at the center of all of them is the order of the 10 Sphirot. It is which includes the world of Asya, Bria, Yitzira, and Asya. Okay. He said this constitutes the order of the name Haviyah, blessed be He, in essence, which is in essence, which in essence, while all the others in His attributes are forms of addresses. And the truth is that even so, all of this is called the order of the name of Haviyah. Okay. For everything that emerges from Adam Kadmon constitutes the order of the name Havaya. He said, this is like a picture or a diagram of which is above, showing how the tree of the name of Havaya is the center of the other attributes or form of address surrounding it. These attributes make up the chariot, are under control of the name Havaya, blessed be He. In other words, the chariots and its form of address or attributes constitute Bria, Yitzira, and Asya are there too. This same order, and there too, the same order exists. The form of the address or attributes are many, but they are all under the control of Avian because they are his garments. He says, "U taher she'iker te avo." He says, "Te avoda lifi ze ha-naim." Accordingly, man's essential service is bound up with the name of Havayah, blessed be He. God, our essentials, our makeup is made up of the name of God. The parsufing in our souls are the central force that controls them. Is that all the light, everything, all the vessels are controlled by this. And he says, in the chariot, I mean, with God, through God's will. And he says, and the chariots themselves are sublimed under the overall name of Havayah. Everything's under the power of that tetragrammaton, that four-letter word that we're not supposed to pronounce. Now we're kind of getting an idea why, or at least saying it in vain, right? He says, it is in the context of this order that they are called four chariot, literally, shiot, shiot. Okay. Okay, so he says in this context, the order of they are called for sha'ot. He said what literally means beast, together with all the other aspects mentioned in Ezekiel's vision of the chariot. This name was placed in the control of all the others because all the other trees are pathways of government according to the residue that remained. While the underlying bond whereby all these things came into unity, hold on, and this name placed under control of all the others because the other trees are pathways of government according to the residue that remained, while the underlining bond where all of these names have come to unity is the tree of the name of Havayah. He said, blessed be he, and thereby the cause of all cause and thereby, so the supernatural tree, because now he's just going into the face of energy. So the supernatural tree is guided by these four letters that we know, the endless world. There are certain letters that went through certain filters. Well, these particular letters that went through this filter combined together and formed the what we call the Havaya, the Tetragrammaton. And and so everything that exists is a frame of light. So the root of all things that are light are the is the name of God. And the name of God is the essence of Adam Kadmon, which everything flows through. And that's what he's explaining to us now. And he also gave an insight to some of the prophecies too, and whether using chariots and beasts and animals. He said, thereby the cause of all, he says, thereby the cause of all causes reveals this unity and binds all the pathways of government into one pathway, which through which evil reverts to good, right? This is the order in which the cause of all the causes asserts is enemy over all the different orders, joining them together in mystery of unity. Only this, as already been discussed, what we discussed there is not division between kindness and judgment, but everything is of a good quality. We discussed that earlier. I just want to see where we're at. Oh man, it's more work, more work. Um, okay, Bezehu amunatem shel Israel ki du'a. So he says the essence of faith of Israel, which depends on the cause of all causes, according that they have faith in them despite protracted exile, even though even though they see no even though they see no such okay wait the essence of the faith of Israel, the Muna of Israel, which depends only on the cause of all causes, which is the creator. Accordingly, they have faith in him despite the protracted exile, even though they see so much that is the opposite of truth and to face so many challenges from the other side. Okay. Okay. Let's keep pushing. We finish off this part and we'll talk it out a little bit. This is heavy, bro. It's really like, wow. This is like body changing stuff. Okay. So he says, yet through the power of unity, they endure everything. And this is the quote above of the passage. Because of this, the Amunah of Israel is centered on these four letters. So this is how big these letters are. The four letters of the name of Havayah. Similarly, we find in the Zohar, Rabbi Yossi says to him, well spoken, because he is within the mystery of the letters of the name of the Havayah. He says we should not get involved in other calculations of the end of time. It is perfectly evident from this passage that the redemption depends upon the mystery of these letters. Okay. And the reason is that through these letters, the cause of all causes unifies all the different levels. And this is what the redemption depends upon. And this is what the redemption, okay. And this is what the reason is that through these letters and the cause of all causes, the creator unifies all the different levels. And this is what the redemption truly depends upon without any doubt at all. He says Nimsa lemed mikol zeh. So he says, and we learn from all of this is that the various orders of government exist relating to each and everything, and many different kinds of worlds exist. The whole world and the whole trees, as discussed above. However, However, there is no one order that lies at the root of the entire government in each and in which governs all the other orders. This is the order of the name of Havayah. So he's really just bringing this, and this is the underlying order that exists within the worlds of Asilu, Bria, Yitzira, and Asya. This is the order begins with Adam Kadmon, and it develops out of its in Asilu, Bria, Yitzira, and Asya. So again, he's just doing a masterful job giving us these pieces, giving us these pieces to it says Lemud Beiseder. Okay, so I think that actually is a good place to stop because there's a marker here. So we're at part 20, but it's going to be easy to remember because we're doing standing in the form of a 10 sphero, right? So that's like going to be a big idea. We should pause there just to take in what we have. Wow, that's all I can say. Elder, you have anything for us?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. What it seems like is that it's a we're learning not just we're learning the anatomy of creation and the anatomy of man's reality, as far as in just even having a higher respect for the name, because it's it really is like, when you make the comment, you say, when we say that our Hashem is in us, he really is in us, and that everything consists of him. There's nothing that he doesn't infiltrate, not by in a rude manner, but in a manner of life force, that he's sustaining everything. And so when we, now understand why we must, when we say his name in prayer, in a supernal place, is very significant, because it's like it's like you're calling your father by his first name, and it's and in creation, um, it just brings us into a whole another reality, that when these worlds are for us, the worlds are not necessarily, if I'm correct, not necessarily being created, but these worlds are already exist. But for the Zadikim, what's happening is that they are able to move and function in that arena. I was reading through the Mission of Torah, and I know Rambam he was talking about the prophets, the section on prophecy, and he was talking about how the prophets, they are able to, they're at such a high level of holiness that they're able to actually see and able to see into those worlds, and be able to not just see in them but also walk and dwell through them, and they receive prophecies. They literally are there, embracing the being able to communicate with the villages called Ishims, but it's the angels, like the lower level of the angels. And
Yep.
so this is awesome because we're talking about not just like a schematic drawing, but a real anatomy. That's why I chose the word anatomy, because we're seeing the intricate details of a living organism. And we look at different organisms in creation, they're just representative of the overall reality of the larger organism. And so yeah, we have to be very careful in uttering its name. And now we're seeing why it's not necessarily saying why, but man, it just gives you a deeper fear and reverence for his name. That his name is alive. His name is actually the glue that binds everything together. So that,
Yep. Hold on. Bring it up. So yeah. I think anatomy is a good word, and it's really showing how everything is unified, even more than we were even clear about before, right? So I don't know where we're going to end up, because I think it's 31 towards the 34, 35. So I don't know where we're going to end up after this, but um, so I guess maybe you could make the argument that it's not enough just to see that a person has a soul. It's not enough to see that the soul has unique lights inside of them, but with those unique lights are literally empowered and fueled by the name of God. And that goes for everything that exists in the world that we could see, and things we can't see, things that have physicality and don't have physicality. Everything that exists, everything that has a function is fueled by the name of God. Otino, you got anything for us?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, it's amazing. There's no coincidence that our learning of the Ram call has perfectly aligned with our reading of the Torah. Like we're in Bayera, and we're seeing how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he's telling him, by this name, the patriarchs did not know me. And I just find it amazing that we are on the Ram call, and we're going through the names and the how profound these names are and what they mean and the cosmic structure of reality. And then once we get to Beshalak, we go into the palm trees. So this is amazing just on that end. Um, it really lets us know that everything emanates from the name and everything will return to the name. So it lets us know that redemption is not just a possibility, but a certainty. That everything in creation has a structure and a root. And Ram Call is breaking this down in such a masterful way. I mean, we're truly blessed tremendously to even be in this year. That Hakadosh Baruch Hu is guiding us through this and giving us this type of chakma to apply to our lives and to understand that Tzadikim, we're not talking about physical worlds here. We're talking about the possibility to give and receive. We're talking about the how to inherit dexterity with our Creator. So I'm blown away, Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, I'm blown away too. And I also feel very lucky to be in this year. And yeah, we're just getting more clarity. We just this is just the first section of it. You know what I mean? So we just like, we gotta juice up. Just more, just more praise of Hashem, more patience. All this type of stuff. So we'll continue on Babat Hashem tomorrow, and we'll start on section 20, and ask Hashem just to open our hearts and our minds, and just make us be able to allow us to mikabel, to receive, his wisdom. Because even though we're reading books and we're reading the Ram Call, this is information that's inside of us, right? This is part of it, right? We learned that. I just sent you guys a share. I gave the same share to a group of in yeshiva the other day, which is around the fact that we're born in we're taught the entire Torah. What does it mean? The structure of the Torah. What we're reading right now. When we were in our mother's womb, we learned this exact Torah, and we're here now, reminding ourselves of what we learned in our mother's womb, right? And that's why it's impactful.